Have you ever wondered how far a parent would go to protect their child? This is a story that unveils the power of love, vulnerability, and trust. Join us as we delve into the emotional journey of a wealthy father, a new nanny, and a sick child whose lives intertwine in unexpected ways. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to Life Tells Stories for more incredible tales of love, hope, and resilience. In the luxurious yet cold confines of the vast Parker estate, Robert Parker, a millionaire businessman, found himself torn between corporate success and the responsibilities of raising his young son, Jacob, who suffered from a chronic respiratory illness. Robert had lost his wife, Emily, in a tragic car accident 5 years ago, and since then, his heart had hardened. The grief had built an invisible fortress around him, isolating him from anyone who tried to come close, including his own son. He found solace in controlling every aspect of his life, including the upbringing of his son. Cameras were installed in every room of his mansion, not just for Jacob's safety, but to soothe his own deep-seated fears. However, his constant need for control had pushed away every nanny he hired, and his son, now isolated, craved stability. The story begins as Robert's assistant, Linda, hands him a folder with a list of new candidates for the nanny position minus 15 names, to be precise. Though Linda's expression carries a hint of concern, Robert's mind remains resolute. He has a clear idea of the type of caregiver he wants for Jacob. Someone professional, efficient, and above all, someone who would never challenge his rules. He needs a caregiver, but he is not ready to let his guard down, not after everything he's lost. Robert spends that evening drinking whiskey in his dimly lit study, thinking of Emily. He looks at her photograph, her bright smile frozen in time, and is overcome by a deep sense of guilt. Jacob was so young when she passed, and he had to be both father and mother to him. But instead, he chose to bury himself in work, controlling every aspect of his environment to feel safe. Something needs to change, but Robert is unsure if he can do it. Enter Isabella Reyes, a hopeful young woman who had spent years as a pediatric nurse. Her deep empathy and experience caring for terminally ill children had left a lasting mark on her, and she was eager for a new opportunity. She knew how important stability was for children, especially those dealing with serious illnesses. Isabella had seen the emotional toll it took on children who were shuffled from one caregiver to the next, never able to fully trust or form meaningful connections. She knew Jacob needed more than just medical care. He needed someone who would listen, who would be present. Unlike the other candidates, Isabella's resume wasn't just impressive, it radiated authenticity. Isabella's photo showed a genuine smile that seemed to speak of kindness and resilience. Something about her eyes made Robert pause. Despite his need to maintain strict control, something about her expression struck a chord with him. The interview was tense. Robert interrogated Isabella, outlining the stringent rules of the household. Cameras in every room, no exceptions. The entire estate was wired to ensure that every corner of the house was monitored, an added measure Robert believed was crucial for Jacob's safety. He watched closely for a reaction, expecting hesitation or reluctance. Unlike others, Isabella didn't flinch. Instead, she calmly agreed, stating that she understood his need to protect Jacob. She had worked with families that had similar concerns before, and she knew that in time, trust had to be built. The sincerity of her response moved something deep within Robert, an emotion he had long forgotten. Hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could be the one. Isabella's first day in the mansion was filled with uncertainties. The house was grand but cold, filled with remnants of a family that had once been happy. She saw framed photographs of Robert, Emily, and Jacob, a family that had been torn apart by tragedy. She was greeted by Linda, who gave her a detailed rundown of Jacob's condition, the schedule, the medications, and how the cameras operated. Linda, who had seen countless nannies come and go, seemed hopeful yet guarded, as if afraid to grow too attached to another fleeting figure in Jacob's life. Isabella met Jacob, a frail little boy wrapped in a soft blue blanket, his golden curls and freckles a reminder of his mother, Emily. Jacob's eyes brightened when he saw Isabella, his new nanny. Isabella's warmth immediately pierced the air of loneliness that had long engulfed the Parker mansion. She knelt beside him, smiling softly, and introduced herself, explaining that she would be there to help him every day. Jacob, with wide, curious eyes, studied her for a moment before offering a shy smile, a tiny crack in the wall he had built around himself. Isabella took note of every detail of Jacob's routine, from his medications to the nebulizer sessions. She wasn't just following instructions, she was looking for ways to improve Jacob's life. Over the next few days, Isabella managed to get Jacob to do his breathing exercises by turning them into games and using stories to make the sessions enjoyable. She talked to him about the ocean, about whales, and how they breathe deeply to stay strong. Jacob began to imagine himself as a whale, blowing out big puffs of air. Slowly, she won the trust of the little boy, bringing laughter back into the mansion. And for Robert, who watched it all unfold through the camera monitors, there was a glimmer of something different, an unfamiliar softness. For the first time, he felt that maybe he had made the right decision. Robert's need for control wasn't just about Jacob's health, it was about the trauma that still haunted him. The night of the accident that took Emily from him was forever etched in his memory. Emily had insisted on driving herself to Jacob's school recital when Robert couldn't make it due to a work emergency. That was the night he lost the love of his life, and he had never forgiven himself for it. Since Emily's death, Robert buried himself in work, filling his life with deals, mergers, and acquisitions, anything that kept him from facing the emptiness at home. The grief had never really gone away, but Robert had learned to live with it by building walls. He had turned into someone who valued control above all else, especially when it came to Jacob's safety. As Robert monitored the cameras, he began to notice Isabella's genuine care for Jacob. She wasn't just doing her job, she truly cared. And Jacob was beginning to trust her, laughing in ways Robert hadn't seen since Emily's death. This realization shook Robert. He started to question whether his methods were doing more harm than good. He watched Isabella make each moment special for Jacob, from breakfast to story time, and he saw the warmth in his son's eyes. Maybe it was time to let go, even just a little. One stormy November night, everything changed. Jacob experienced one of his worst respiratory crises yet. The humid weather triggered severe breathing issues. Isabella rushed to his room, finding Jacob struggling for breath, his small body trembling as he tried to gasp for air. Robert, in his panic, began dialing doctors, calling for an ambulance, his mind racing with every possible scenario. He couldn't lose his son. Not now, not after everything. But Isabella knew exactly what to do. She positioned Jacob in Robert's arms, encouraging Robert to breathe slowly and deeply to help Jacob calm down. "He needs to feel your calm, Robert," she said softly, her hands guiding Robert to hold Jacob firmly but gently. Isabella's guidance worked, and gradually, Jacob's breathing stabilized. Robert was astounded, not just by Isabella's capability, but by the realization that his own presence was what Jacob needed most. The sight of his son, leaning back against him, holding on to his father for safety, was a revelation for Robert. He realized how much Jacob needed him, not just as a protector, but as a father who could be present, who could offer comfort beyond material wealth. Robert was overcome with an emotion he could not explain, a feeling that maybe he wasn't alone, that maybe he could share this burden. For the first time since Emily's death, Robert began to see the possibility of healing, not just for Jacob, but for himself as well. In the days that followed, Robert found himself spending more time at home. He watched Isabella with Jacob. She would turn nebulizer treatments into pirate adventures, talking about the treasures they would find if they breathed deeply enough. Medicine became a magical potion that would make Jacob strong enough to sail his imaginary ship. Jacob flourished under her care, and Robert began to soften, even allowing himself to smile more often. The laughter that once echoed through the halls of the mansion returned, and with it, a warmth Robert had almost forgotten. One particularly chilly morning, Robert decided to join Jacob and Isabella during breakfast. He watched as Isabella prepared a colorful plate for Jacob, arranging fruits to look like a funny face. Jacob giggled, and Robert couldn't help but chuckle as well. It was a simple moment, but it felt like a breakthrough. He realized that she wasn't like the others. Isabella wasn't just a caregiver. She had become part of their family. She brought light to the shadows that had plagued their home for so long. Slowly, Robert began to open up to Isabella, talking to her about Emily, something he hadn't done in years. He shared stories of how he and Emily had met in college, how she loved dancing in the rain, and how she would always make him laugh, even when times were tough. As their conversations grew deeper, so did their connection. Robert found himself drawn to Isabella. Her warmth, her empathy, her ability to see the beauty in life. Her presence was like a balm for the wounds he had carried for so long. On an evening when the first snow began to fall over the Parker estate, Robert made a decision that changed everything. He proposed to Isabella, not out of convenience, nor out of necessity for Jacob. He asked because he had fallen in love. He had seen in Isabella a light that guided him out of the darkness he had hidden in for years. She had made him believe that it was possible to love again, even after loss. Robert planned the proposal meticulously. He arranged for dinner on the enclosed veranda, which was lit softly with fairy lights. He chose a simple yet elegant ring, one that he knew Emily would have approved of. As they finished dinner, he got down on one knee and took Isabella's hand in his. He spoke of the way she had transformed their lives, how she had brought joy back into his home and love back into his heart. Isabella was taken aback, her heart pounding. She hadn't expected this, not from Robert, who had always seemed so unreachable. But her heart knew the answer. She said yes, not only because she loved Robert, but because she loved Jacob, and she saw a future for all of them. A future built on love, vulnerability, and courage. The moment was perfect, and as the snow fell gently outside, they embraced, knowing that this was the start of a new chapter for all three of them. The wedding was a small, intimate affair in the estate's winter garden. It was attended by only their closest friends and family. Isabella wore a simple ivory dress, adorned with details that resembled soft ocean waves. Jacob stood proudly as Robert's best man, his chest puffed out with importance. During the ceremony, Robert spoke his vows, promising not only to love Isabella but to honor the memory of Emily, to make their home one of joy, not shadows. Isabella, in turn, promised to love Robert and Jacob, to be their lighthouse during the storms of life, and to keep Emily's memory alive in all the ways that mattered. Jacob also made a promise. He promised to be the best son for both of them, and he added a sweet promise to his mother, to keep her memory alive. He spoke clearly and confidently, his innocence bringing tears to everyone's eyes. Tears flowed freely as everyone understood the magnitude of this moment, a moment where love conquered fear, where grief gave way to hope, and where a family, once broken, found a way to become whole again. The reception was held in the main garden, which had been transformed into a wonderland of white and blue flowers, reminiscent of the ocean that Isabella loved so much. As the evening went on, soft music filled the air, and people danced, laughed, and celebrated the beginning of this new chapter. Isabella and Robert danced under the stars, their eyes locked on each other, and for the first time in years, Robert felt at peace. Now, we want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced moments where vulnerability led to an unexpected but beautiful connection? Let us know in the comments below. Your stories inspire us, and we'd love to hear how love, in its many forms, has touched your lives. Life wasn't magically perfect after the wedding. Challenges persisted, especially with Jacob's health. Just a month later, Jacob developed an infection that led to a 3-day hospital stay. It was a terrifying time for both Robert and Isabella. They stayed at the hospital, taking shifts to ensure Jacob was never alone. They were exhausted, fearful, and vulnerable, but they leaned on each other. For the first time, Robert wasn't hiding behind walls or security systems. He allowed himself to be fully present, fully human, and it made all the difference. Isabella shared her own fears during those long nights in the hospital room. She confessed how she had lost her brother, whom she had cared for tirelessly during his battle with cystic fibrosis. She admitted her fear of loving and losing again, just as Robert had. In that hospital room, with Jacob sleeping peacefully beside them, they found comfort in each other's arms, realizing that while fear might never fully go away, love could still thrive alongside it. The day Jacob was finally discharged, Robert and Isabella brought him home with a renewed sense of purpose. They knew there would be more challenges ahead, but they also knew they would face them together. For Jacob, the hospital stay had been frightening, but he found solace in having both Robert and Isabella by his side. He knew, without a doubt, that he was loved, that he was safe, and that no matter what happened, they would always be there for him. Months passed, and life at the Parker mansion became more vibrant. The walls that once seemed to close in on Robert now felt like the walls of a home, warm, comforting, and filled with laughter. Robert began working more from home, ensuring he could be there for Jacob when he needed him most. They turned Emily's old room into a memorial, a place where they could remember her, celebrate her, and share her stories with Jacob. It was no longer a room of sadness, but a room of love and memory. They filled the room with photographs, her favorite books, and even some of the shells she had collected from the beach. It became a place where Jacob could come to feel close to his mother, to ask questions, and to understand who she was. Isabella helped them create new memories without erasing the past. They laughed, played, and even danced in the rain, just as Emily used to. They learned that love isn't about avoiding pain. It's about being brave enough to embrace it and find joy despite the risks. One night, as they sat on the balcony watching the stars, Jacob said something that brought tears to their eyes. He spoke about love in different colors, describing how love for his mom, dad, and Isabella were all different yet equally important. In that moment, Robert realized that he had everything he could have ever hoped for, a family full of love, resilience, and hope. This story isn't just about hiring a nanny. It's about finding love after loss, about overcoming fears, and about learning to trust again. Robert, Isabella, and Jacob showed us that love is limitless, and that even after the greatest pain, we can find a way to heal. The journey wasn't easy, but it was beautiful, full of laughter, tears, and moments of deep connection. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to Life Tells Stories for more heartwarming and transformative tales. Don't forget to like the video and leave a comment below. Your interaction helps us bring more stories like this to people who need them. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, remember, love is the greatest adventure of all.